Well, thanks for clicking on this video. It's a little bit of different content for the channel, but if I find myself doing a job which is really bad and I find a workaround and there's a quicker way of doing it, then I want to share it. This video is about the Mini One Microfilter box and the blend door actuator, which I spent 6 hours on yesterday. It was without doubt the worst repair I've ever had to do in my life, but I'm going to explain how I've done it, and hopefully with these tips, if I had to do it again on another car, I reckon I could probably do it in an hour and a half to 2 hours. So it's going to save you a lot of time. First of all, let me tell you where this story began. The car had been standing for a while. I took it out of the parking space, put the blower on, and there was a noise in the blower. I knew there was something obstructing the blower, so I had to find out what it was. Through doing a bit of search on YouTube, I found out the air filter box is underneath the passenger footwell. There's a filter in there, and when I opened it, I found a load of paper and twigs and everything from some rodent that had been happily living in the box. First of all, let me show you what to do to clear the blower. So the blower is situated in the passenger footwell, and there's a little door there which you just prise open along that ledge, and out of there is a long filter which is now being disposed of. But what you basically do is you can get in through this door. I'm just going to go up with the camera. You go up here and along there, and that's where the blower is, and you can just get your hand in along there and pull out all your bits of stuff or anything that's obstructing it. So as a result of cleaning out this compartment, I found this actuator blend door, which is actually behind the battery, and I realized it was just kind of flapping around. So I had to try and find out why it wasn't secure in one place or the other. I'd already fathomed out that something was broken, so on I went with my next stage of research into what was going on with the actuator and the blend door. I eventually put the ignition on and found the actuator was working, therefore I knew it was some problem with the door or the mechanism. To remove the blend door, it was quite simple. There's a little piece of shaft sticking out at the inboard side of the car, and on the outboard side of the car there's some type of shaft that goes to an arm, which I'll show you in a second on a video. That was broken, so the blend door just pulled straight off in my hand, and I think this is quite a common problem. Now the other part of it is access. From what I can gather, to change this box is a nightmare, and it could require complete dash removal. There is virtually no way you can get into any of the fastenings on that actuator door box where it mounts onto the blower. I'll just spin it round and I'll show you now, but there's absolutely no way you can get to those fastenings. So you might see that little plug there with the flathead screwdriver mark on it. That seems to be a plug that pulls out to access one of the fastenings on the box. But as we go underneath here, it all disappears off up in this direction over here. It's all behind this pipework, and I just couldn't see any way of getting that box out to replace it. Little bit of a shame, as I found a replacement complete box for €99 on eBay, brand new. So why they have made this so difficult to replace this actuator and blend door, I don't know, but it's ridiculous the time I had to spend on this yesterday. So that's the housing there, and that's facing forwards. And you can probably see there are two fastenings there, and obviously one in the back where I've just shown you where you can take the plug out of the glove box. So How you meant to get to those without major disassembly, I have no idea. If you do need a housing, there's the part number 64113422674. So I started doing a bit of research online. There's very little about what to do in this situation. Eventually, I found a thread on NorthAmericanMotoring.com, and it seemed this guy had exactly the same problem as I had. This actuator is actually slightly different to the one I have. Mine has a screw here at the top and another one at the bottom, diagonally in one direction or the other, but this arm arrangement is identical. And what I didn't know before I started getting in there and probing about was that this arm here, which fits into that slot and then on the end of the flap, was actually broken off just as this guy had found out himself when he'd started to disassemble the unit. And that is exactly what I had on the end of my arm. So however the door is fixed into this arm, it had broken off and sheared there. Why they're doing this, I don't know, but mine was exactly the same as that. So there was another comment in this thread. I think that's the actuator I have in this car with the diagonal Torx bits, which actually is a Torx 20. This guy had a bit of problem accessing the fastenings, and it looks like he's made himself a little Torx key specially just to get in there. So with this knowledge, I set about trying to disassemble it and see where I could go from there. So this was indeed the daunting part. How on earth could I get in there? As you can probably see, I've taken off the trims all the way along this side of the car, and I'll just show you now. The only access to get up there is through this little hole here. That's the only access to get up there to the actuator, which is virtually level with this vent on the side here. So this took me a long time, but I'll explain what I did. I've taken as many fastenings out of the glove box as I could. It doesn't move on that side. It seems like it's integral to the complete dash, but I've managed to get a little bit of movement at this side. You can actually get in there and put something between the airbox and the glove compartment, and you'll maybe get about 1.5 inches more space so you can get your hand up to where the actuator is. I got my hand up there, my left hand, and as always happens, the broken part fell straight out of the recess down onto the floor. I just thought to myself, how on earth am I going to get that back in? But anyway, priority was to try and get some method to fix the door and the arm which went onto the actuator. So in the thread from American Motors, there was a comment the guy had just drilled out the end of the door, put a self-tapping screw in there, fixed it all back together. I had no idea how I could get a screw in there and screw the whole thing back together. So I ended up drilling out the end of the door, running a drill down that broken hole, maybe 1/2 inch, 2 centimeters. And I needed to find something to put between the arm and the door itself, like some sort of shaft, so I could get the two bits mounted back together in the box. I looked high and low. What I was looking for was something that had a little bit of flexibility. It wasn't brittle. It's not going to crack or break. And I've just used a bit of this. It's a plastic water pipe that is very rigid, but also very flexible. It stays quite stiff. It's got a decent wall thickness. So what I did was I just cut out about 1 inch of that, sort of a bit thicker at that end, tapered it down at that end. I then took the broken arm, cleaned out in there, put the piece of pipe through there and glued that in with epoxy. The next problem was getting it back into the hole and getting the flap to go onto it. This is the part that took hours, which I will explain how I've done it now and hopefully save anybody a lot of time that's trying to do this job. The first thing I discovered was you can get in there with your left hand by hanging out the side of the car, but your left hand, if you are right-handed, is not ideal for dealing with Torx fastenings, screws and more intricate things. I was on for hours. I eventually got it back in, and then I realized I couldn't get the actuator onto the slot. I eventually decided I'd have to tackle this from a different angle. So what I did was I tried to get my right hand into the hole. So I lay it across the car from the other side and somehow managed to get my right hand up behind that hole. I used a small T20 Torx bit. What I did was I backed off the screws of the actuator enough to just pull it off, enough to get it onto that slot without removing it completely, as I envisaged if I did that, I'm probably going to drop a screw or not get it back in place. Here came the next bit. Eventually got it in place. I had the shaft sticking out of the housing. I tried to put the door on and the door pushes the arm back through on the other side of the box. I had to fathom that out for a while and eventually came to find out that the way to do it is I had to disassemble the whole thing again. You put the door into the box, it fits quite snugly, and a little bit of the door on the end goes into the recess in the box. And then what you have to do is you take your repaired actuator arm with the little piece of shaft on it and you get up with your right hand or left hand and you get that pressed in from the outside of the box into the door. Great. The next problem was it was on the shaft. It was working, but I was a bit worried that when it heats up in the summer and it starts going back and forward, it might start slipping. So I had to figure out how I was going to secure it on the new piece of shaft that I glued in. Glue I didn't think was a good option. It might get messy, it might get in the recess and glue the whole thing shut. So what I did was I got a Dremel, and I don't know if you can see right up in that corner there where I'm just putting the light now, I drilled a little tiny hole through the end of the flap into the new shaft. It took a couple of goes, but eventually I hit the new shaft that I've put through and I've secured it transversely with a tiny little screw. And guys, this is the result. You have to have the fan running to work the door. It's now in the closed position. There it goes. And I've just realized actually the little screws I put in are to the right of the picture on the other side of the door. The other video that I did doesn't show the screws, but there's the screws there. And as we can see, there it closes, there it opens. There it closes, there it opens. That repair there took me 6 hours yesterday. If I'd known everything I've just told you on this video, I think I probably could have done it in an hour and a half to 2 hours. I've saved myself 150 euros on the part. I've probably saved myself 7 or 8 hours labour taking the complete dash out of this car and putting it back together. I didn't want to disturb the dash and all of the screws and the connections, so I'm happy about that. I think the repair's going to last. It's not a part that you operate very often, so fingers crossed that piece of plastic that I've cut and put in to utilize it as a shaft is going to provide some service. I'll just give you a quick look under the bonnet now to show you what goes on under there. So this is state of play under the bonnet on this car, and you can probably see there is just a hole there where the air intake goes into the car. I've been onto the Mini site, and according to one parts catalogue, there should be some piece of plastic over that. So that is something I need to do a little bit of homework on. But regardless, I think in view of what's happened with the rodent getting in there, so on and so forth, I'll be putting something over there just to provide a bit of protection, as if anything falls down there, it's going to go straight into your fan motor, which is precisely why I think so many people have these noisy fans on these cars. Well, thanks for watching the video. I just hope it's been helpful to someone that's got this problem. Give me a thumbs up, put something in the comments if you've got this. If this is something you're going to tackle, I hope you're really comfortable at being upside down, because you do have to be upside down in that footwell for quite some time. If you are a bit worried about accessing the actuator, I virtually had it off last night, to be honest. One of the screws came out completely in my hand. I wouldn't like to take it off completely, but I'm sure if you were stuck, you could change that actuator without taking off the complete box. Other people have done it on the forums. I probably could have done it last night with a bit of patience. So if you have got the problem, don't worry, there is a fix if you can be bothered to spend the time and make a little workaround like I've done. Thanks for watching the channel. If you like my vids, don't forget to click and subscribe. Cheers, guys.